and welcome to Just One More Cookie, a podcast about two sisters' journeys toward complete health and wellness. We definitely don't have it all figured out, and we're still in the thick of it, but we are enjoying the ride. We'd love for you to come and join us for just one more cookie.
Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just One More Cookie. My name is Amy.
And I am Abby.
And we are so excited that you are here this week. We took a couple weeks off of a sabbatical, and if you follow my social media at all, I went home, which was super exciting in the midst of a pandemic. I went home to visit my family because I got homesick, so I had a really great time. But now we are back in action, and we have a really great topic for you today, because today we are talking about excuses shouldn't excuse you. So we're going to be talking about our excuses and the things that we might put in front of us to make us not live up to our fullest potential. But before we dive into the topic, I just want to remind you, if you are watching us on YouTube, subscribe. Go ahead and click that like button, click the subscribe button, leave a comment, share the video. If you are listening to us on iTunes, not iTunes, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, make sure that you leave a review so that we can raise awareness. We planned out the next 6 episodes of season 1, and we are so excited because we have some really great stuff coming for you guys. So please make sure that you are sharing and liking and all the great things so that we can build our community. So today we're starting something new that we are both excited about, because one of the things that we like to talk about with each other, and I know when you're starting your health journey, you probably find yourself getting into conversations with other people who are doing the same, of what are you guys eating, right? Because when I'm not on a health journey, I don't need to ask that question, because what am I eating? Of course, cookies, cake, snacks, chips, all the things that like are easy to purchase. But when you're watching what you're eating, sometimes it can be difficult. So the product is called D-A, Carb. So let me explain what this is, because I love it, love it, love it. And it is a great alternative to bread, and it's a great alternative to like regular wraps, especially if you're trying to watch your carb count. I'm not advertising any sort of restriction diet, but if you are trying to balance your macros, balance your fat, your protein, or you're just trying to find a healthy alternative, and you are like me and you love sandwiches and bread is life, carbs are life. I like this wrap because, first of all, it's really big, so you can make pizza with it. You can make obviously wraps with it. And because I am a wrapaholic, I do like breakfast wraps. I do sandwich wraps. Sometimes whatever I'm having for dinner, I just shove it in that wrap. I just wrap it up. But it's a big wrap, so you can fold it really well, and it's dense enough to where it doesn't break. And also, here's another trick. If you want the wrap to be a little crunchy, which I like a little crunch, you can put it on, just put a little bit of spray on your skillet. So I use like an olive oil spray or a coconut oil spray. You can put a little spray on your skillet and just take the wrap and just warm the different sides until it gets crispy. So then you can like really make a delicious, if you want your wrap a little bit warm. The only drawback of this is that it's not in a lot of grocery stores, so you can order it off of Amazon. Another alternative to Carb, and I'm going to link this in the notes if you're on YouTube. Another carb that's comparable to this is called Joseph's Lavish bread, and it's very similar in size and taste. And that one can probably be found I know for me it's in Publix. It's probably going to be in Meijer in the Midwest, probably in Kroger. But anyways, when I put the brands, you can go on your grocery store and search to see if they have them. But try it out and let us know. Another reason why I like it is that it doesn't taste like tree bark. It tastes really good. So that is our exciting food tip for this week. And we're going to be sharing those with you guys every week. Things that we've been finding that are good alternatives that are delicious in our eyes. Like, a lot of these are subjective, but I think we have a pretty good palate. I've been doing it for long enough to have a pretty good palate for health food. So we're going to jump right into the topic. And when we were talking about the idea of excuses, so I have this epic story about my tooth, and it's a story that my mother loves to bring up, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So this started about 2 years ago, and I started feeling this a slight pain in my teeth, and I obviously ignored it because I was like, oh, it's just it was just like a slight ache. And then the slight ache went to every time I ate, I had to like pause and then just kind of touch my face. And then it went to every time I opened my mouth and a little bit of wind came into my mouth, I had to lay down in the fetal position. So it got really progressive. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a lot of meds and that will help me. And then I was going on YouTube and trying to find videos to heal yourself with your brain. Because
wow.
Now listen, guys, I don't have health insurance, so the struggle is real. Then I went online and looked at how do you fix a toothache naturally. Like I was looking for like between $15 and $20 remedies. So none of these things were essentially working.
This sounds terrible. I feel like your next step was going to be like from the scene from Castaway where he takes the ice skate to get his tooth out.
But it's funny.
Did they give that suggestion on you?
But it was like, that's what I was thinking. And then like, I felt like the tooth was getting loose because now I'm like in my head, right? I'm like in my head thinking it's going to fall out. And then it went from it's going to fall out to, you know, the scene in Willy Wonka, not the old Willy Wonka, but the new one, Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory, and his dad's a dentist. And he's like there, and I think he was like pulling out his teeth. So then I had that image that all of my teeth were going to be pulled out. So I'm going through all this, but at the essence of it, I'm still not doing anything to get it fixed because I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to find a dentist because I don't have a dentist here because I don't have health insurance. And then I wasn't making I was going through a very famine type financial situation. So I was like, I didn't just have extra money. And you know, anytime you go to the dentist and it involves an ache, it's like, oh, hello, deposit $1,500 at the door, you know, before we've even touched the tooth. So I'm like already thinking all those things. So I'm like pre-overwhelmed before I even go to the dentist. So, but at the same time, I'm so miserable that I'm like, okay, I have to do something. So I decide I'm going to call a local college because they do dental work at a discount. So these are like college students. So I go there and I have to pay $150 for them to even look at my tooth. And now I'm pre-annoyed. So I'm sitting in the chair and they're looking at it and they're like, okay, you're going to need a root canal, which I kind of figured. And I was like, okay. I said, well, what's the cost of this root canal? It was going to be $2,000. And I was like, oh no. So I take the little paper and I'm like, okay, well, at least I know I have a picture. They gave me a picture of the tooth and it was indeed infected. And at the same time, I have like, you could tell the tooth was infected. It was just a whole mess. So I go home and I'm holding onto the paper and I'm thinking, okay, so all I need to do is just get $2,000. It's that simple. Because of course they don't take payment plans here because it's a school. So I'm like, well, how do I pay for it? And she's just kind of looking at me. She's like, you come in with $2,000. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll earn it, you know? Now, needless to say, this is last November. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to earn the money. Well, in the midst of me earning the money, the pain started going away. So I'm like, I've been healed. I've healed myself. Like everything's fine. I don't need to pay $2,000. So it gets towards the beginning of the year, and I'm not joking. In March, 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, it comes again. But this time, my whole face is swollen. Like the whole side of my face is swollen. And I called my mom, and I think I was either crying or about to cry because the pain was so awful. And she starts saying, you need to go right now. The infection is spreading, and it's going to spread to your heart. and you will die. It was like in real time, she was telling me the pain is moving through, the infection is going to kill you. And
did she also tell you, I told you, Aim, to get that tooth fixed?
Yeah. Because I've taken her along this journey with me. Which, I don't know. Everybody's mother is like this. It's like you want to tell them, and then after you're done telling them, you think, no, maybe I shouldn't have told them. So I start calling dental offices. And as I'm calling the dental offices, they're like, oh, we're not taking anybody because COVID. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I'm going to die in the midst of the pandemic because I can't get into a dentist office. So a few weeks, so I had to wait. And of course, I'm like taking meds. I'm like, but then it started to get better again. It like the pain started going away. And I finally get into a dental office, and it was like everybody's in hazmat suits because they're like, we're only taking you if it's an emergency. And I'm like, this is an emergency. So then I go into the dentist office. I had to pay another $150 for them to take a picture of my tooth because, of course, they wouldn't accept the other picture because I was like, oh, I got this. I have the x-ray from the school. They're like, we can't accept that.
Well, was it because it was about 6 months old at this time by now?
I don't know, but it hasn't gotten better. So take that picture and just get a general idea.
Well, maybe it's probably gotten worse. That's probably why they needed it.
Well, it's neither here nor there because $150. I have a cell phone. Just take it with my cell phone. That'll give you the idea. So then they take the picture and they come back in with the hazmat suit, because this is like in the midst of the pandemic. They come back in and the dentist, he looks at it. He's like, nope, it's dead. Got to pull it. And I was like, got to pull it. He's like, yeah, it's got to come out. And I was like, what can we save it? And he's like, nope, it's dead. We got to pull it. And I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do once we pull it? He was like, well, you can get another tooth. I said, oh, okay. So now I'm like feeling more encouraged because I'm like, I don't want a hole in my mouth. Because that's just another fear. Like that first this one, then what other ones? Then my whole, like I'm losing all my teeth. So then he's like, do you have insurance? And I was like, no, sir. He was like, yeah, it's about $10,000.
Ooh, gut punch.
Grip my heart, right?
Oh.
Now, where we are currently at, the tooth is still in there. It doesn't currently hurt. It has moments where it's like, it still hurts a little bit, right? I'm still watching YouTube videos. I'm just convinced that I am telling my brain to heal thyself. I'll keep y'all updated on that. But one of the things that frustrates me about this whole situation is that this has been going on for 2 years. Like this has been a progression of 2 years. And it's like every time I felt the pain of it, I would just say, I would put it off, or I would ignore it, or I would say, I'm not willing to pay the cost of it. Or I would say, it will get better, or I would just distract myself by going on YouTube and getting those meditations that say, now close your eyes, tell your brain, where do you want the healing to go? This is real. They really have these.
Wow.
And I be closing my eyes being like, go to the tooth, brain, go to the tooth. I don't have $10,000, brain. So it's like, but it's like I'm going to all of these like really weird like measures. Like I'm about ready to like go to like an acupuncturist, like because the thought of paying that cost, it was like almost like a pride or an ego, like, oh, it's not that bad. But every time I waited and every time I would go back, it would be more and more expensive until now I'm facing losing a tooth. And when it comes to the idea of excuses, sometimes I think for most of us, there are things in our lives, right, that come up that we know like, oh, I need to do something about this. It can either come up through like physical pain, emotional pain, like your environment, like there's something in your life that that needs to change or something that you want. And it's like we make immediate excuses for it for a variety of reasons. But a lot of times the excuse comes down to we're just not willing to pay the cost, and whether that be physical cost or the cost of effort that it's going to take. So we just kind of shrug it off and put it off. But what we're not realizing is that life is continuing as we're making excuses, and it can cause really detrimental effects. And I know you have a similar story to this. Your story is not about your teeth because you never get cavities.
No. Well, I sometimes I do, but I take care of my teeth. My dentist, I love him. I've had him since I was like 8 years old, and I will go to him as long as I can because I love him. He's amazing. Yeah. But yes, I take care of my teeth. I went through way too much pain for them. So anyways, my story is not as exciting as yours. It's not as funny either. So pretty much mine is not really a story, but for the longest time, and I still struggle with this to this day, I have always struggled with my spending, with my budget. So we really weren't taught how to budget at all. And I like to shop. I really do. I like to buy things. So it's an unhealthy thing. So I really got myself messed up when I first moved out, and I was in my 20s. And so I move out into my own apartment, and then I'm like, okay, so I'm an adult. I'm excited. I'm going to just, live my best life. Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't know how to budget. So I would just go, I'd go to the grocery store. I'd go to Jewel, which, by the way, Jewel is great, but Jewel is expensive. Mm-hmm. So I would just go and I would just buy stuff that, was way too expensive. I didn't pay attention. And then I ended up overspending. I ended up getting into a big bunch of credit card debt, and it was just a giant mess. And so it was I wanted to address it. I wanted to do something with it. And it wasn't like I wasn't trying to pay it off. So I would get paid, and then I would sit down. I'm like, okay, I need to pay off this credit card debt. So my minimum is $150. Well, I want to put a lot to this. So I'm going to pay $300. And then of course I wasn't taking into account my bills that I had throughout the week or throughout the month. And so then I'd pay $300, but then I would overdraw my checking account. So it was like this vicious cycle, and I was down spiraling so badly. And it was almost like I just didn't want to deal with it. So I would ignore it because I'm like, you know what? This is just way too overwhelming. I'm just going to, I'll figure it out next month, or, maybe I'll get more money or something, or maybe I'll win the lottery, or maybe I'll find a rich husband. Yes! And then I'll just be a kept woman, and then he'll buy me everything. And then I won't have to pay any of my bills.
Wait, how wonderful would that be? I'm going to send you the YouTube video on how your brain can attract a really wealthy man. Listen.
Okay.
Those YouTube videos, anything that you want to attract.
So is that what I'm going to do? Yeah. I'm going to tell your brain, you need to find a rich husband.
Yeah. Brain, send him and let him be willing. And upon first meeting, as we exchange our credit card statement, that he is willing to pay off plus interest. You have to make sure that you say that, plus interest.
Plus interest. Okay. Yeah. So mine, I did make a lot of excuses, and most of mine was I just wanted to ignore the situation because I thought if I ignore it, it will go away. And of course it didn't. It kept getting worse and worse and worse until I'm in my 30s still dealing with it. So luckily I finally got myself to a point where I found something that could work for me. Because that was another thing too. It was too hard. I didn't want to do it because I thought, I don't know how to do this. I've not ever been taught to do this. I'm not good with spending my money. I don't want to completely say I'm not going to buy anything because I enjoy shopping. It's fun. There's such thing as retail therapy. It's a real thing. Mm-hmm. So I enjoy spending my money, and I work really hard at my very stressful job. So I want to spend things on stuff that's nice that I enjoy. So I'm like, I can't do that because I can't cut myself off and not ever let myself spend any money. So then I don't even know how to do it. So it was almost like one of those throw up my hands. Well, I don't know how to do it, so I'm just not going to deal with it, which is it's not a good way to handle your stress and your issues. So at least I finally got to the point where I found, like, I use an app that helps me to budget, and having everything sit there and broken out and budgeted, now I'm doing much, much better. But that initial trying to figure it out, of course, it was difficult for me. And I thought, I don't want to do it. I sat there and made a ton of excuses as to why it's not going to work or why I don't want to do it. So It's very easy to make excuses for everything. We made quite a bit of excuses today about how we didn't want to do this, but we were tired. We wanted to take a nap. Mm-hmm. You can make excuses for everything.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that these stories kind of reveal is that it doesn't matter. Like, excuses are maybe make you feel good. Like they appease you for the moment. But the thing with excuses is that it doesn't stop the repercussions from happening. It doesn't stop time from moving. Like, excuses are only like mentally calming you, but they're doing nothing else. Like, it doesn't matter how many excuses that you're making. The bank is still saying, didn't pay, 20% interest increase.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't matter that I'm like, turning on a YouTube video saying, brain, please heal thyself. It's like my body's still saying, attack the root of this tooth, attack it. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't matter. So I think one of the things that we really want to speak to today is we want to talk about some of the reasons why we are putting off the things that we know we need to be doing. And I want to really focus on health. Because me and Abigail, this kind of started in a conversation with the amount of people that will come up to us and that have come up to us during our entire journey, especially people that knew me at my heaviest and they might know me now. And a lot of people will come up and say, oh, I'm so inspired, like, oh, I need to get my health journey together. I need to come work out with you, or, and they'll always have these like good intention statements, right? And maybe they're making those statements for themselves, but it's like, we have all these good intentions, or we have all these statements of things we want to do because deep inside of us, we know what we need to be doing, right? Deep inside of us, we know the changes that we need to be making and the effort we need to be putting forth, especially in our health. But a lot of us just don't do it. And there's a number of reasons. So I know one of the major reasons is we can be lazy, and it's sometimes it's the simple things that we can be lazy about. Like, the first step in like going to get my tooth fixed is just going on google.com and looking at area dentists. And for me, I made that to be such a huge chore. Like, oh, I don't feel like it. Because when you are trying to avoid something, even the littlest things seems like it's a big task, So I think a lot of times we get lazy in the fact of we keep putting things aside so much that task then becomes magnified, right? It's like the idea of, oh, I know I should be working out, but this, but that. So now where it becomes this, like, even to get up and go on a walk just might make you sick to your stomach, because it's like you've made so many excuses and you've gotten your brain in like this lazy, I don't want to do it mode. So it becomes fighting against yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, it kind of seems like I get into this mode of a little kid. Like, I don't want to do it. It's too hard.
Yeah.
Like that mentality. It's, in order for me to get up and conquer my laziness, I have to do work. And it seems very overwhelming. Just like the budgeting thing. I didn't want to do it because it was going to take a lot of effort and I was too lazy to put in the work. And I feel like we do get that ourselves in that situation where we become little kids and just sit and, your mom says, okay, you need to do this. And you're like, I don't want to, it's too hard. I can't,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's very easy to use that as an excuse that it's too hard. I don't want to do it. Another thing I think that can sometimes mess us up and get us into that area where we're making a lot of excuses is we feel like we're just too far gone. So, whether it's in your health, you could have maybe gained so much weight that you think, well, what is the point? Because now I've gained so much back. I'm not going to be able to do it because I am too far gone. So in order for me to do it, it's going to take something drastic, or I'm going to have to go and get a bunch of plastic surgery for me to fix this. You feel like the obstacles are too overwhelming and insurmountable. So I think that if we put ourselves in that situation and that's all we focus on, it's so easy to turn that into an excuse to stay where you're at.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's a little bit of embarrassment of that too, because sometimes we try to avoid things so much that like to face reality sometimes might cause us embarrassment of what the other person might think. Like I remember when my first time going to Weight Watchers, I was so sick to my stomach to get on the scale because first of all, I hadn't gotten on the scale yet because I didn't even want to look at it because I knew that I didn't want to say huge. I was big. I knew I was big, but it's like I didn't want to face that reality. And then when I got on the scale, it was like having somebody else see that number along with me was really hard. It was necessary, but it was hard because I knew I had let myself go. And I think a lot of times when we're in the midst of it and we've just like made excuse after excuse after excuse, and we finally make that decision, sometimes people might still continue making the excuses because they're afraid of the embarrassment that they might face if other people know, even though people know anyways. But it's almost like being scared of really facing reality to tell yourself, this is how far you've gone. It's like for you, Ab, like it would have been easy just to not even look at the bills and just keep spending upon spending upon spending until
Which I
finally,
did for quite some time.
yeah, until finally you have to look at that number. And that number is like, oh, I owe Citibank $10,000. That's a gut punch.
Yeah.
But sometimes we need that gut punch. Otherwise, your car gets repossessed. That's an even deeper gut punch. Or you're homeless, and that might sound extreme, but that's what happens when we continue. And then when it comes on the side of health, this is where one of the most sobering things, we keep avoiding until the gut punch for us might be some sort of illness that we now have to deal with long term. It might be diabetes. The gut punch might be type 2 diabetes. The gut punch might be that you've let your weight go so far that you start having issues with your heart, that you might have a heart attack, or that you might have to be wheelchair bound, or you might have to go to a nursing home. It's like we keep putting it off because we don't want to face the truth and we don't want others to be privy to that truth. But the problem is on the other side of it, like you've lost full control of your life. And that's a very scary place to be. And I especially want to talk to people who might be a little bit older in terms of what society believes is old, right? Like I think sometimes people get to a certain age and they just think, well, what's the point? Well, I'm this age, it doesn't matter anymore. It always matters. It should always matter because every moment that you have an opportunity to breathe is a moment that you have the opportunity to live life to the fullest. So how sad is it that, you have 85, 90 full years of life that you're able to live, but at age 60, you become debilitated by a health-related illness that now gives you 30 years of an illness. So you're still living, but you have 30 years of an illness that limits your life because you made excuses, because you wouldn't face you, So I think even the idea of that you're too far gone, if you still have a pulse, you are not too far gone. And, I think it's interesting that what we can even connect to this is it's not just that we think we're too far gone, it's that we minimize it. It's that we think it's not such a big deal. And I do this a lot. I am the queen of minimizing. So even when it comes to the idea of my tooth, like it's easy for me to minimize it without realizing that if I have an infection in my mouth, right, the potential of that infection to spread is there. So I can minimize it and try not to think about it. But that doesn't mean that the reality is not there, that not dealing with that could cause even further health issues with my teeth. And while the sacrifice, the financial sacrifice and the pain that it's going to take to get one tooth fixed, it pales in comparison to what's going to happen if my whole mouth needs to be reworked on, you know? So I think a lot of times we minimize things and we think, oh, it's not such a big deal, without realizing that the actions that we are taking or the actions that we're not taking are not just about this moment. They're not just about who you are right now. It's about who you are becoming tomorrow, right? The bill that you choose not to pay today isn't just about today. It's about the interest that you're going to have to pay tomorrow. So I think a lot of times we minimize by just looking at the here and now without looking at the holistic picture of what are your excuses costing you today? And then what are they going to cost you tomorrow, 5, 10, 15 years down the line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's easy to fall into that trap because it's easier, right? If we say it's not that big of a deal, it's almost like I feel justified when I say that, I don't really have to deal with it because it's not that big of a deal. And then my inside voice says, oh, you're right. It's not that big of a deal. You're okay. And I say, thank you, self. I'm right. You're right. Yeah. And then it's easy to say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And then you don't have to deal with it. So it's a really dangerous trap to fall into. Another thing that I don't know if I would say it causes us to make excuses. If we have a fear of failure, I know a lot of us, especially those of us who are perfectionists, we struggle with this a lot. And it's that fear of, I don't want to try to fix this because I think I'm going to fail. And if I look at my failure in the face, it is going to kill me because I get my worth from being a success. I get my worth from not being a failure. And then if I look at myself and I think, oh, you're such a failure, you are a useless human being because you tried to do this and you couldn't. So I think that it's so easy to do that. And it's very difficult to overcome that fear. And because of course, nobody wants to be a failure. So it's easier for us to not even try, but then the consequences don't go away and we still have to deal with them. So I think that especially I noticed that this one, especially in the beginning, was something that really put a stop to me making some changes, is because I thought if I did make the changes, I wouldn't be able to sustain it. And then I would fail. And then everybody would say, oh, look at her. She tried to change and she couldn't. What a failure. Of course, which is stupid. Nobody's even really paying attention to each other and thinking, oh, you're a failure. But still, it's a real fear that a lot of people have.
Yeah, and I think we have to like rework what failure is, right? Like I think true failure is doing nothing. Because if you know you need to make a change and you know that the way that you're living right now, if you keep going down this path, it's going to get worse, then to me that is failure, you know? Mm-hmm. But when you are attempting, when you are doing something to make a change, even if it doesn't work, you have data to now go back and do it again better. Like I know one of the things that we talked about, Ab, was when I was home, Abigail was purging her clothes, and it was so exciting. She was getting rid of the clothes. Yeah, she was getting rid of the clothes that were too big on her. I came home with a huge bag of clothes, so excited. But we were purging her clothes, and she was like trying on clothes that she used to be able to fit into before she gained some of her weight back. And it was like so amazing. We were getting really excited. The dogs were into it. We were clapping. It was really exciting. And we had our health call that Monday, and Abigail was talking about how she was like panicking a little bit, mm-hmm. because it was like getting rid of the bigger clothes and now getting back into the smaller clothes. She immediately thought, what if I fail again? What if and go ahead and speak to that. Let me not tell you.
Well, yeah. Okay. So, and that segues nicely into another one of our reasons that we make excuses, is that we fear that we're going to fail again. And I struggle with this so badly because I know, you have dealt with issues of losing a lot and then gaining some of it back, but you've never gained a significant amount back ever. It's always been a manageable amount. Whereas with me, every time that I've gained back, it's always been 40 or 50 pounds. And then I'll have to lose it again. And it's been like probably 3 times. So as soon as, and I'm telling you, I got anxiety while we were throwing the stuff out, which some of it was out of date. So I thought, well, even if I ended up gaining a whole bunch of weight back, I wouldn't wear this anyways, because it's not cute anymore. But to not have that safety net anymore, and I literally thought that while we were driving into Goodwill to drop it off, I got sick to my stomach, and I thought, what if I gain it back again? I mean, I have at least twice already that I can remember in my head, because it's hard to separate the times that I've gained it back. But I really got a lot of anxiety because I carry that with me. What if I fail again? So then it's easy to, if you're at the other end, like if it had been before I had lost any of the weight, it might have stopped me, because I thought, well, if I try this again, if I fail again, what am I going to do? I mean, I'm going to have to mess up my budget again, because now I'm going to have to spend thousands of dollars to try to build a new wardrobe, stuff that I can fit into. But I know that having that fear of, well, I failed before, I might fail again, can really almost deadlock us and help us to make excuses so that we don't make a step in the right direction or a step forward.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I was saying to you, and I say to myself a lot, is that when you have a quote unquote failure in your mind, think about everything that you were able to learn. Like even from like a health, like a weight loss perspective, one of the things I said was the last time that you had gained the weight, you didn't have any accountability in your life. It was like you were trying to navigate it on your own. A lot of it was dealing with emotions, and it was like you didn't have an outlet. So it's like understanding that was detrimental to your journey. This time around, now you've implemented a strong support system. You've implemented weekly accountability. So it's like failure is not what we believe it is. That is data collection. That is living. That is growth. Like all of those things, as opposed to rewind, to the very first time that you even decided to lose weight, rewind to that moment and say, well, I'm just not going to do anything. That to me is failure. If we go back to that moment and you say, I don't want to do anything because of the litany of excuses that we've just talked about today, that's failure. But the fact that you keep going back and you keep trying and collecting data, maybe you do well, maybe you don't do well, and you're getting better at it, right? So even the whole idea of the fear of failure or past failure is not really failure. It's just you continuously trying. And if you try something and it doesn't work, or it's not long-standing, then you go back and you reassess and you say, let me collect data. Why didn't it work? Do I need to do a different program? Do I need to put different disciplines in place? It's all just helping you to grow. And I think something that is so important and something that we take for granted is the illusion of time, is this idea that I have time. And I think sometimes because we're just living, right? We're just living, we're just moving, we're just going. We can forget that while we're living and moving and going, our bodies are deteriorating. That's just the fact of life, right? So the idea of I'm going to wait, I'm going to put it off, I'm going to wait until this moment, I'm going to wait until New Year's Day to start, I'm going to wait until Monday to start. You don't know what's going to happen to your body between now and New Year's. You don't know what's going to happen internally between now and this moment that you're saying that you're waiting until. Time moves, and all you have is this moment to take control of it, because this is the only moment that's promised. And even this moment, time is pretty much an illusion. There's no present. I mean, we can go into depth with that, but you don't have things that are promised. So it's like making sure that you're not consistently making excuses and living a life that and it's not even a life that needs improvements, but it's a life that you're not happy with. If you are in a body that you're not happy with, and you're allowing yourself to live day after day in that body without even attempting to make changes, that's days of misery. That's days of not being the best version of yourself when you have every day 24 hours of an opportunity to change that. That's powerful.
And I want to kind of segue from something that you said that I thought was really good, that as another thing that causes us to make excuses is waiting for that perfect moment. Because I know you said, if I wait for New Year's Day or, that I can start I'm just going to wait until this happens. So like for me, I remember when I first started Weight Watchers, I remember you had started, I think 2 years before. And my time was, okay, I had graduated from college and I said, okay, I'm going to wait until I'm out of college. And then my semester actually was over in August. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait because it's too much right now to deal with. I'm very stressed out. I'm going to wait. And then I said, okay, well, I'm going to end up waiting till the end of the year. So, however, there is something to be said about waiting for like a beginning, a starting point. Because I watched a TED Talk actually that said that if you make a change or you make a goal and you start it at a clear beginning. So if you started at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the week, a beginning of the month, whatever, if you start it there, you sometimes have a better chance of sticking with your goals. Of course, there's way more into it than just that, obviously, since people make New Year's Eve goals every year and vast majority of people break them. But I think it's very easy for us to put things off because we say, well, right now, I'm not ready. Like for me, I wasn't ready because I said, things are really stressful with school right now, which I mean, it was a pretty decent excuse. I mean, I was very busy. I was very overwhelmed. And especially when I first started on my weight loss journey, it was a very drastic change because I had never been healthy my entire life. So a lot of things had to change for me. So, but I could have let that whole mindset perpetuate. And I could have never gotten to that point where it was perfect because my life was always stressful. Then I got a new job, which was a dreadful, terrible job. And it was very stressful. So I could have used that as an excuse. So I think there's something to be said about having a start date. Because I mean, you can't wake up and say, okay, today I'm going to change my life, because that usually doesn't work. So there's something to be said about making a plan and having a start time. But for you to just say, I'm not ready yet because my circumstances aren't right, the circumstances will never be perfect. But if that's what we're looking for, it's so easy to dismiss it and wait for it and make it as an excuse.
I think too, a lot of times when we're just living and things are like, okay, it's like our need for change sometimes comes up sporadically, but we just like dismiss it, right? The same with like my tooth pain. I don't really think about it until it starts to hurt like really bad. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I need to deal with that. But when the pain starts subsiding, it's like I just dismiss it. And I think a lot of times we can get ourselves into the zone of just settling. I think this is another one. Like we can just settle. Things are good enough. It's okay. It's not the best, but it's okay. And I think that when you get yourself into the mode of settling, you can start settling in every area of your life, which means that you just have okay health, or you're just in okay relationships. Your career is just okay, And on the other side of that okay are all of these really great things that you want to accomplish, and all these really, detailed dreams that you want with your life. But it's like, sometimes the discomfort and the pain come up and then we dismiss it. We use addictions, we busy ourselves, we watch TV, we eat, we take naps, we sleep, because we're just trying to avoid that nudge, that voice that's saying, there's something better. You don't have to settle for this. But once again, I think that takes a decision, that takes, like you're saying, a starting point for me to say, okay, like, I'm not going to keep ignoring this. I'm going to make a decision and stop making excuses. And I think one of the most important things, and this is something that I've done as well, is stop waiting on other people. Stop
Mm-hmm.
depending on other people to, first of all, give you permission to live a really great life, to be the best version of yourself. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for someone to say it to you right or to inspire you, or stop waiting, like saying, well, I would go and work out, but I need people to go with me. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great, I mean, it's great to have people do that. But I know for me and you, like, I'm a people person, so I would have loved that, but I didn't have that when I started. So I was like, okay, I don't have the ideal situation, but I'm going to work out anyways. I started Weight Watchers by myself. Like, I went by myself in a room with a whole bunch of people I didn't know, because if I had waited on somebody else to make the same decision, then not only am I depending on somebody to come on the journey with me, now my motivation and my willingness to stay on that journey might be attached to another person who might not be as committed as I am. So then my whole journey is now attached to another thing besides myself, which then can start with excuses like, oh, well, I was going to work out, but Abigail's my accountability buddy and she decided to sleep in, so then I'm going to sleep in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have done that though in the past.
I know.
Yeah. So I know I've had this. There's a couple of people that have even said stuff to me. There's this one older lady that every time that I start to lose weight, she always comes up to me and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm not doing, I guess she wants me to tell her there's some kind of secret that she can do that's not going to involve any work. I said, just the basics. I'm watching what I'm eating and I'm working out. Oh, you should help me because I just struggle so bad. And, especially just with, I've got this fat belly fat that I can't get rid of. I just really need your help. And I always like kind of dismiss it like, oh yeah, okay. But I'm thinking, what do you want me to do for you? I can't do anything. You're going to have to make the decision. I can tell you, hey, I use Weight Watchers. It works really well for me. Here's their website. Please go on and do some research, because honestly, she's going to have to want to change. I can't be there at her house and slap the chips out of her hands. So, I mean, it's the same thing. I've had people before. I had this is a couple people have said this to me, like, oh, pray for me. I'm trying to live right. Pray for me, girl. And so one time, this one girl, she kept asking me, and she was like, God knows my heart. He knows that I'm just struggling. Just pray for me. I said, you know what? Pray for yourself. I said, and of course we're laughing about it. I said, you're perfectly capable of praying for yourself, because I could pray for you all day, every day, until you decide to make changes in your own life. My prayers are going to be useless. So pray for yourself.
Yeah.
So I mean, we had a good kick out of it. But I mean, the mentality is true. You can't wait for somebody else to do the work for you. Unfortunately, it would be really wonderful if I could have somebody come and motivate me every day and wake me up and say, get up, we're going to work out right now. Or here, I just made you this very delicious meal that has only 2 points in it and it's going to be amazing. We don't have that. So we're not going to be able to rely on other people to get us moving.
Yeah, and advocating for yourself it has to be foundational. You have to be your biggest advocator. I've worked with so many different trainers, right? Because I love physical training. And it's like, they're great and they're very motivational. And in the hour that I work with them, and some of them even reach out, send text messages, all of that, it's wonderful. However, when I leave their presence, I still have to be the advocate that says, Amy, wake up at this time. Amy, put this in your body. Don't put this in your body. Amy, go out and go on a walk. It's like, if we attach ourselves to people, that's where a lot of the excuses can come in anyways. Well, I would, but this person. Well, I would, but even our life circumstances. We can let our life circumstances be what we're depending on to keep us in the same mode that we're in. Well, I would, but I have kids and I don't have time. Valid excuse. But there's so many people that have kids that still are able to work on their weight. I would, but I have knee issues. great excuse, but there's people, do you know what I'm saying? Like when you become an advocate for yourself, you allow excuses to come in, but you let those excuses fuel you to research your way around it. You say, this might be a limiting factor in my life, but I am connecting to this person. I'm doing this research. I refuse to let these things stop me.
We've talked about all of these excuses that we can make and that we do make. So let's talk about what we can do about it. How do we stop this cycle and get ourselves back on the path of getting to where we want to go and accomplishing our goals? So one thing that I think we need to do, just the starting point, is we need to do some self-evaluation and become more self-aware. So we need to basically ask ourselves, first of all, the first step on fixing a problem is admitting that you have a problem. Mm-hmm. So we need to evaluate ourselves and say, am I making excuses for myself? Am I letting myself off easy instead of actually saying, you need to be more disciplined. You need to put these changes in place because your life is not where you want it to be. So we have to really look at that and say, is this something that I need to address and I need to make a change about, make a change basically. And then also, why am I doing this? Why am I making these excuses? What obstacles am I allowing to get into my way so that I am not moving forward? So like I said, first step to admitting or to getting to your goals is admitting that you have an issue and that you have a problem. So it's very important to do some self-evaluation and figure out, why am I doing this?
Yeah. I think too, like really figuring out what it is that you want. So I do this sometimes when I feel stuck. Like, it's really easy to identify what we don't want, but it can be much more difficult to identify what we do want. So one of the things that I suggest is, whatever age you're at right now, I think that's really important, like to just get into your mind that it's never okay to give up on yourself. And it's never okay just to stop, and just say, life is good. It's okay. Like, there's always room to grow. There's always room to be better. There's always room to help others. So I think it's important that you really know and are clear with, what do you want? What do you want from your health right now where you're at? If you had your ideal body, your ideal health, like internal health, your ideal mental, emotional, physical health, what would that look like? Your ideal career, your job, is it what you have right now or is it something else? What does your ideal relationships look like? Like, get really clear with what you are wanting, right? So that when the moments of excuses start coming up that will make you want to just stay where you're at, that your clarity that you've set will remind you that those excuses aren't enough to keep you from what you really want. Because sometimes excuses can really block us because we don't really know what we want. So it's like we're just thinking, I don't like this, but I don't know what I want, so I'm just going to stay right here. But when we know what we want, when an excuse comes into place, we'll say no, because I know this is what I want to look like. This is what I want to feel like. This is what I want my life to represent. And that keeps us going back to that.
Mm-hmm. Right. And once we get to that point, once we figure out why we're doing this, what our why is, what is it that we want, we really need to create a plan, because we're not going to wake up tomorrow and be 50 pounds skinnier. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and have our budgets all taken care of and not be in any more debt. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and have our teeth be completely healed, no matter how much we tell our brain to heal the tooth until scientific study tells us otherwise. So what we need to do is we need to create a plan. So the best way to do that, we need to set some goals. So I don't know if any of you have ever heard of SMART goals. It's an acronym. So stands for goals that are S, specific. So you can't just be like, I want to lose weight and be skinny. So, I mean, how much weight do you want to lose? It has to be measurable. So I want to lose 50 pounds. Okay. It has to be attainable. Me, I can never be a size 2. I know that this is not feasible for me, and that's fine. I don't need to be a size 2. But the goals that I have, I need them to be attainable. Otherwise, I will lose my mind and I'll give up. It needs to be relevant, and then it needs to be time-based. So you give yourself a certain amount of time. So in 1 year's time, I want to lose 50 pounds, which is completely reasonable. It's attainable. It's measurable. So that way, if you do those kinds of goals and you have one that you can actually accomplish, it'll help you to get on that plan. And then it'll help you because it'll actually be something that you can succeed at. So then you can celebrate that. So once we get to the point where we know what we want and why we want it, then we can create the plan so we can get to that point.
Yeah. And I think when you're doing SMART goals, the beauty of that is that you can have short-term SMART goals and you can have long-term SMART goals. Like you can get as specific as you want, right? And that goes back to what we just said. If you're specific with what you want in your life, now you're creating your plan. And then you can say, okay, in a year's time, this is what I want. But also focus on, okay, so then what am I doing this week to get me to the year? Because if I just have that, I want to lose 50 pounds, but I'm not putting in goals each week that are inching me towards that 50 pounds might seem like a finish line that's so far in the future that I can start making excuses because it's a year from now, like, I'll wait until, October and drop 20 pounds a month. We'll really start getting into that like unrealistic mindset. So looking at the long term and also the short term, and then also really getting a quality support system in your life is so important. And I know we talked about not depending upon other people. So this is not a support system that you're getting to depend on and that these are the people that are pushing you and making you understand that you are and you can only be your biggest cheerleader, your biggest advocate. Nobody should be cheering you on more than you are cheering yourself on. And I think a lot of us falter when we stop. We are usually our biggest critic. We usually are the one who are like the ones that are doubting ourselves. And then we're looking for other people to do something for us that we're not even doing for ourselves. So you have to advocate for yourself, but also you get a support system in your life that you're telling your goals to. Like I know with us, we do a weekly health call. And on the weekly health call, we are supporting each other. And, our friend Drea, who's on the health call with us, we are so proud of her because she just decided that she was going to do something for 30 days. Was it 30 days?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was 30 days. She was going to do something just for her. And she had a plan and it was dealing with her health. It was dealing with her spiritual life and she was going to do it. We didn't prompt her. We didn't say, you should do this. She just decided this is what she wanted to do. And it's like every week we do a check-in. Now, me and Abigail aren't texting her in the morning and saying, remember those 30 days? You've got to get up. You've got to. It's like she shared it with us to hold herself accountable. But at the same time, she has advocated for herself and has done it every single day. And when she feels like, a couple of days ago, we live in Florida, it's hot. Mm-hmm. And one of hers is like getting outside and working out. And if you're in Florida, that is a chore this time of year, right? So it's like she'll send us little text messages of, it's hot, but I'm still doing it. And we're celebrating her and we're giving her the accolades. But at the end of the day, it is Drea that has made the decision to do it. And we're just there on the sidelines saying, go, go, go. So when we're talking about a support system, you're just finding people to do the go, go, go in the background, while internally, every morning you're getting up and saying, go, go, go. So find people who are willing to go on that journey with you and support you and give you the determination that you need, but understand that you are your greatest support system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually think when you're talking about that go, go, go in the background, I think that we can do that for ourselves. And one thing that I think that you can do is to talk to yourself in the third person. And I actually was listening to a podcast actually last week, and they were talking about, they did this study, and I don't remember all the studies, so I really don't want to try to explain too much because I don't want to jack it up. But the point was that they had people actually talk to themselves and kind of take themselves out of the situation. So if they were stressed out, one of them, I think they did they made them do public speaking, and then they had them go back and evaluate it. And those that actually stepped back from themselves and actually talked about themselves in the third person. Like, what did Abby do good? And then what did she do bad, or badly, I should say. So, and they even said they did this with kids, that they would redirect kids if they were doing homework and they were getting really upset or they were getting stressed out. And then they instructed the parents to redirect the kids and say, okay, imagine that you're Batman. Explain to me how Batman is feeling and what Batman needs to do. And these kids that stood back from themselves and objectively looked at the situation, they were able to be more successful. So I know for me, one thing that I've done in the past, is I write myself notes, and I write myself, it's not like, okay, I need to get up today because I need this. I write it to myself, and I will address myself a little post-it, and it will say, Abigail, get up tomorrow and work out. You have been very stressed out. Today's going to be a bad day for you. You're going to need the endorphins. And I'll put it by my bed. So basically, it's not me by myself thinking, okay, yeah, I need to get up. But it's like somebody telling me. And like you said, our biggest advocate should be ourselves. So when I read that little note, it's not coming from, oh yeah, I guess I should get up. It's like my biggest advocate, Abigail, is telling me that I need to get up and I need to work out and I need to do something today that's going to help me to do better. So if you haven't ever tried it, give it a try, see if it helps. And to have that extra person in your corner cheering you on, especially if that person is you, I'm telling you, it's great. It'll really help you.
Yeah. And then I think it becomes easier for you to overcome excuses, right? Because you have learned your own voice. You have learned that internal voice, and you've learned how to address it and talk to it. Like, I know I tell y'all, when I wake up from naps, sometimes I get like ravenous, like so hungry. Like I said, the Incredible Hulk, and I still stand by that. So I had an Incredible Hulk moment this last week, right? And I took a nap, and it was one of those naps where you wake up and you're like, who am I? What am I? What is the world? And I was so like out of it. So I sat in my bed and I was like, bakery, Valhalla Bakery. Listen, I'll talk about this bakery till the day I die. So I was like, Valhalla Bakery. I need it right now. Bakery. So I'm like gathering my things. And in my mind, like, I don't need it. It was against the plan that I had set for myself this week, but I didn't care because I was in the Incredible Hulk mode. So I get my stuff together and I'm walking out, and this is so funny. I walk out and then I'm like right by my car and I'm like, no, don't you dare get back in the house. And I walk back in the house and I get close to the door, and then I was like, no, Valhalla. And I walked back to my door. I was having this like internal argument with myself. I get in the car and I'm driving, and like I am attempting to turn off my internal voice because I know what my internal voice is telling me. Like, Amy, now you know the goals you've made for yourself, the promises, but I'm telling myself, shut up. I keep saying that. I get to the bakery, I park, and I sit in the car. And then it was like a movie moment. I really need a camera to follow me because I have a lot of movie moments. This was like the music is coming and I'm sitting there and I look at the rearview mirror and I'm like, now you know that you shouldn't be here. You know what you promised yourself. So then I reverse the car and I'm driving back home. And the whole time I am talking to myself and I'm saying, Amy, we've already had this talk. We've already done this before. You have conquered this. This is unacceptable. You shouldn't be like, I am laying into myself, like really. And I'm driving home and I'm like, I'm having that like, safe driving, but also vicious driving. And I'm like, you've got to get it together. And then I came home and I probably had like one of the best workouts that evening. Like I went to that workout and I was working out with someone. They were like, why? They were like, you killed that workout today. I was like, I know. I have all this motivation because I gave myself a very motivational, get it together talk, So I think the idea of talking to yourself and becoming your own advocate cheerleader, but also becoming the person that says, absolutely not. Get it together. I'm not waiting to call Abigail and say, Abigail, I'm at the bakery. What should I do? Because I know what Abigail's going to say. She's going to say it sweetly. But in that moment, I needed myself to come back to me and to remind me, no, this is unacceptable. We're not making excuses. We're not just going to say, well, it's been a hard day. I'm tired. I need that cookie with icing in the middle.
Yum.
Yeah, it's so good. But I think another thing too is giving yourself deadlines for what you want, right? What you want along the way. Because a lot of times when we're making excuses, it's because we haven't made the decision yet, or we've made the decision and it's so obscure that it's easy for us to make excuses, right? So if I just say, I want to work out, I've decided I want to work out, but I don't have like a goal and I don't have a deadline in place, it can be easy for me to just get back into bed. But let's say I've made a deadline. Like, let's take Drea, for instance. Drea's made the 30 days. I'm going to be doing this. I'm waking up at this time, and this is the action I'm taking. Because she's given herself some form of deadline, it allows her to work towards something. And then it becomes easier to not make excuses because you've made a decision. Because in your head, there's a number to it. There's a process to it. So it's easier for you to stick to your goals. So whatever it is that you're desiring, give yourself deadlines. If you want something to happen by when? Is it a day amount? Do you want it to happen in a month? Do you want it to happen in a week, a year? Give yourself deadlines. Put a process to it. How are you going to reach that goal? And then when those behaviors come up that might take you away from that goal, it becomes easier for you to get rid of those excuses because you're saying, no, I have set this in place. I put this deadline in place and I want to reach this goal.
Mm-hmm. I think also when we're talking about our goals, I think we also always need to have a backup plan. So when I first started Weight Watchers many, many years ago, I remember because I started in January and we had a wedding that we were in May, I think. So my goal was I wanted to lose 50 pounds. So it was about 5 to 6 months, which is not a very reasonable goal. But I would just started, so I was kind of ignorant. And then when you first start, a lot of times it comes off really quickly. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna be on track. And of course, because that goal was not reasonable, I started to get to April and I was not gonna hit it. So I thought, okay, I need to reevaluate because I can't just say, okay, I didn't lose 50 pounds, forget it. I failed, I'm done. So I'm like, okay, I am really close to 30 pounds. I have like a month left. I think maybe I had like 3 or 4 pounds. And I thought, okay, I'm going to set the goal at 30 pounds because that's a pretty reasonable goal. And that's a significant amount of weight. And sure enough, when it got to that point, I got my goal. So I think if we have backup plans, that way, if something does come up, because there's always unforeseen things that are going to happen. There's always something that can come up. And if we say, this was my goal and I didn't meet it, I fail, it's so easy to give up. But if we say, okay, this was my goal, but there's this obstacle in place, so I have to shift. And so now my new goal is going to be this because my circumstances didn't allow me to achieve my first goal. So if we have that backup plan, it helps us, which I think you have to keep it as like a contingency plan. It's not, an excuse to not make your original goal. But I mean, sometimes things happen. So you need to have something in the background to fall back on if you need to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when we're making plans for our health, it's like a guessing game because you don't know what works best for you. Even when it comes to like meal plans, like what foods, I am always switching around my meal plans and my nutritional plans because some foods I don't even realize have a negative impact on my stomach and the way that my body processes it. So the idea of contingency plans is that anything that you're doing for improvement, understand that there's always some things that might work for some person might not work for you. Like there's workouts that Abigail does that work really well for her, but might not work for me. So if I'm putting things in place and I'm starting on my health journey and it's not working as best as I wanted to, I can make the excuse by saying, well, I tried, but it just didn't work. Well, what are your contingency plans? What are the backup plans? What are the other things that you can do? Because there's never going to be a one size fits all. what kind of things can you put in place that say, if this meal plan doesn't work, what's something else I can try? If this workout doesn't work, what's something else that I can try? So always be willing to pivot your plans and pivot your goals if something's not working, instead of just making the excuse of, it didn't work, I tried it, and now I'm not going to do anything. Because then that sets you back. That sets you back to the beginning. And I think one of the main things, to just wrap all of this up, is I think one of the things that makes me so excited about my life is the amount of things that I have done and that I have quote unquote failed at. And the amount of times that I said I wanted to do something, but I didn't, because underneath all of that has just been this driving force that says, I always want to be better. I want to be the best version of Amy. I never want anything in my life that is exterior to me that I can control to make me live a life that is well below what is enjoyable and what makes me happy and what makes me give the most to the world. And I would encourage you to do the same, that don't be okay with being unhappy. Don't be okay with feeling like you are operating well below your potential and your health is nowhere near what it should be. Don't be okay with that. Don't excuse yourself from that, because especially it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what age you are. Like I said before, you still are living, which means that there's an opportunity for you to live better. So don't allow yourself to keep making excuses and keep yourself trapped in a body that you're not happy with, in a relationship, in a home, in an environment, in a career, whatever that looks like. This applies to everything. Stop making excuses and start making the decision that you are going to do whatever it takes to really improve upon the areas that you already know. We already know. It's just that we sometimes we dull that voice. So our challenge to you this week, we're going to give you a challenge and we want to hear the results. Our challenge to you this week is we want you to focus on one thing that you have been putting off. So what's that one thing? There could be 15, but what's one thing you've been putting off, and what is the obstacle? What's the thing? What is keeping you from moving forward with it? And what is the first step that you're going to take? So the one thing in your life that you know that you are wanting to change, or that you know that you need to address, what is the obstacle? And then what's the first step that you are going to take to change that? And we want to hear. So take some time to think about it, talk it out, write it out, whatever you have to, and email us. Let us know. Our email is onemorecookiepod@gmail.com. So email us, let us know what's that challenge that you're working on, so that we can be your support system, because we're sharing. We want you guys to be our support system, because we're still in the thick of it. We're still on the journey. So let us know what your challenge is, and stop making excuses, because excuses, they do not excuse you. So thank you so much for joining us for one more episode of Just One More Cookie, and we will see you guys next week.